Cali Fish Keeper. Hey, I just kind of was doing a quick video because, as some of you guys might know, especially if you were following me on Instagram, recently we were out of town visiting our daughter in Las Vegas, and we spent up there about 7 days. We just got in back last night, and I was curious to see what was going to happen in my fish rooms, since I was going to be gone for quite a bit of time, and I was not going to be able to have anybody to look over after my fish. So I decided to just do some water changes right before leaving, and see what happens with my fish, what would survive, if I would have any fish that would pass or anything like that. And I wanted to share that with you guys. To be honest, I kind of had an idea of what was going to happen. I know I've been listening to more experienced fish keepers mention the argument that we in the hobby really do tend to overfeed our fish. It's just a thing that we do. I know that we do care about them and we try to provide the best life for them, but I'm starting to really believe that our philosophy when it comes to feeding fish might be incorrect. Anyways, I'll show you what I'm talking about as I show you guys around the fish room. Like I said, I was gone for 7 days, and I didn't have anybody here to come and feed the fish. We did hire a service that would feed the dog, but other than that, that was it. So I kind of have some theories as to why I had success, and I'll share those with you. And but enough of that. Let me turn you guys around and show you my tanks, and I'll share with you guys why I think I was able to pull it off. And you guys can either leave a comment and either kind of think if you agree with it, and if not, then also let me know. So let me turn you guys around. All right, so the first thing I wanted to show you guys, I do have a filterless setup, and that's this little pond. It's one of those 20-gallon totes that you can pick up at most of your big box stores. I know they use them usually for like for beverages to cool them off in large volumes. So, but in here, this is a filterless filter in here, and I thought if anybody was going to suffer a little bit was going to be this tank. I don't see the killifish in here right now. They're probably hiding out. They were moving around earlier until I started filming. As a matter of fact, there's one right in. I don't know if you're going to be able to see him. There he is. Yep. There they are. They're darting around in there. Well, anyways, this is a filterless pond. As you can see, it's all I have in there is I have some hiding spots for them. I have a spawning mop, and you know, some jungle veil and a little bit of hornwort, and that's pretty much all the vegetation that's in there, all the plants. My theory behind this filter, having a little bit of success, comes with this light right here. This is the only light that I have in the fish room at night that consistently stays on, and the other reason why I think I've had a little bit of success with this one and with some of the other tanks, you see that side door on the garage? Well, that stayed open the entire time, and that's because our dog comes in and out of the garage. This is kind of like his dog house. So my theory behind this is because this light is constantly on, and especially at night, it is probably attracting insects from the outside that are kind of curious about the light, come in here and end up falling onto this pond. As you can see, I have an insect there, and you know, all around here you'll see little insects. As a matter of fact, you'll see like little moths that are flying around here and stuff like that. I'm thinking, here's another insect in here. I think that is probably what keeps this system up and running, is that it has that natural food, just like they would in the wild. They come to the light, they fall in the water, and then they become food for these fish. I really do think that is part of the reason why this pond has had some success, and because the plant load is not that heavy. Although the fish are not very big, they don't require a whole lot of substance. You know, I'm thinking that's one of the reasons why I didn't have any losses in here. Now, if we go over here, is where I have my shelly tank, and you can see them. They're hanging about and they're fine. They're looking good. One of the things I did check to see if I had babies, but nothing yet. In here again, I think they're getting some falls of insects. There's one floating around in there. It's not a whole lot. It's not like, you know, this is getting overwhelmed. But they're there. And then the other thing is, if you notice on the glass, there's tons of these smaller snails. I wouldn't put it past these guys that if they really got hungry, that they wouldn't be opportunistic and feed off of some of these guys. But anyways, that one was fine. The only thing that I did notice when I came back, the water levels did drop significantly. I did refill some of these last night as I came in here. This pond was probably down all the way down up to right about the bottom of that line for water evaporation. I'm going to do some water changes this morning, but last night I just kind of refilled some of these. This is a guppy tank. As you can see, this has a little bit more of a heavier plant load. And one of the things that I did do in here, and this was intentional, I put in some of these little algae, hair algae that I pulled from some of the other tanks, and purposely placed it in here for a couple of reasons. One of them, because I knew that was going to have some microorganisms attached to that algae that were going to allow to feed some of the smaller fish. And as you can see, I had fry while I was gone. Let me find some of these guys. I just saw them swimming around in here. There you go. So I knew that if they dropped fry, they were going to be able to they're going to have some natural source of food. The other reason is the adults really got hungry. They would nibble on that algae and be able to survive. So there is something to be said. I understand the beauty of these really manicured aquariums, and they're beautiful for viewing and stuff like that, and you can keep fish in there. But obviously in something like that, you might not be able to leave it unattended for so long and have some success without you interjecting and providing food for them. All these plants in here will produce infusoria and be able to create a system where they're going to be able to survive. Also, one of the reasons why I think my fish were able to do it, because I don't have any really large body fish, other than, I'll show you, my angels are probably that, well, my goldfish, and the electric blue acara were the only ones that I was really worried about when this was going on. In here I have my blue barbs, the light's still off. Well, let me get the light. On this one, I didn't leave the light on. I left it off. I did have some mothballs in there, and then I did put some hornwort. That was not in there before, if you remember seeing some of my previous videos on this one. One of the drawbacks of me not leaving the light on this one, you can see that my plant suffered a little bit. I do have some anubiases in here, and now I'm going to have to go back in here and probably put some liquid fertilizers in here, because I don't have any sort of substrate, so there's really nowhere for them to pull some of the nutrients that they need. My light just came on. But anyways, you can see the barbs are all doing good. So I know that was a concern of mine at first, but you know, being that they're a smaller fish, I think they're going to be fine, and they were. So, oh, and that one I did put a little bit of duckweed on the top. You know, also as a natural food source. If they really got hungry, that's something that they would have been able to nibble on and keep them going. They don't look skinny, as you can see. As a matter of fact, a couple of the females look like they're ready to drop eggs. So that was good. Down in here, this tank has always been sort of an experiment. This was a tank that another fellow YouTuber had asked me to obfuscate, and for the longest time I had this tank without a light. I was using low light plants, but as you can see, this is in a rack. Let me pull this back so you guys can see this well. This is in a 3-tier rack. It's at the very bottom, and the idea was I was trying to see if I can get it to grow plants with ambient light, and I'm going to say that right now that it was probably a fail. Actually, it was a fail because the plants were not thriving. They were just making it. It wasn't until right before I left that I actually put I found a lid on Marketplace, and that they were selling for a 20 long, and I went ahead and purchased that, and I've had that on. And the reason I can tell that these plants were deficient in light, you see how long and leggy these plants are, and the leaves are not all together, is because they were trying to stretch out and reach whatever light source they could be able to get. But as you can see, after those 7 days of being on, you can see that green tint on those rocks. That's from that light being on the whole time that I was away. And that's okay, because that gives an area for my shrimp that are in here. I don't know if you can make them out in there, to be able to graze. And as a matter of fact, it looked like they were driving this whole time, because there's a bunch of them in there, and you can see little shrimplets that are in there. So they were doing fine. I didn't lose anybody. I have some white clouds in there. Matter of fact, she looks like she's getting ready to drop eggs. So they did fine. Again, worst case scenario, because I do have shrimp in here, if they really got into a point where they needed a substance, I'm pretty sure they would have predate on some of those shrimplets. Up here is the rack of 10 gallons, and these I really never had any doubt. These were not even once a concern of mine, and here's why. These tanks are very seasoned tanks. These tanks have been up and running for over a year, and so I really do think that that there's a lot of microorganisms in here, and these guys being very small, we're going to have no trouble feeding off the infusoria that's naturally in this tank. And I don't know if you can pick it up. You can see them swimming by, the little microorganisms inside the tank, and I think that's what they were driving from. So these guys are all doing well. In here I have a little bit of green water, and you know, any seasoned fish keeper is going to tell you green water is the best thing for fish, especially smaller fish. Again, and this one, I don't know if you can make it out. There's some little shrimplets in there, along with these black chin live bears. So if for some reason they really needed another source of food, there's all these little shrimplets in the bottom that they would have access to. In this tank, there's also that, but these guys are a lot smaller. These are the neon green rasboras that was sent to me by Foxy. Yeah, Foxy and Peplin. And you know, there's some shrimp in here because I haven't fed these guys. I'm not really seeing the shrimp out here, but they do tend to hide inside of that rock formation. And as food gets put, you can see one guy hanging out right there. Let me put a close up as I go. And I purposely leave these rocks patios so that it gives them a place to hide. But Like I said, these tanks, I was never really concerned about these tanks. I knew these were going to be fine. This one is my heavily planted 10-gallon tank. This is where I have my least killifish. And in this one, you can see there's also, now there's a sort of a green tinge to the water. It didn't have that before leaving. But I have I have some fry in here, as you can see. I'm going to be honest with you, this is pearl weed, and this pearl weed had a little bit of green hair algae in there before I left, which is a great indicator to me that when I didn't feed this tank, these guys resorted to eating some of that hair algae, which is kind of what naturally would happen which is kind of what would happen out in nature. So there is something to be said of having heavily planted tanks. I got to do some serious maintenance on this, because I don't know if you're going to be able to see, but if you look at my finger, I got some green hair algae, some of that spot algae on the glass. But all of that is, believe it or not, food for these fish. So in here I have it's one of the guppy tanks that I'm kind of working with these guys to try to see if I can get more. These are all from my these are not any straight lines. These were from a mixed tank of guppies that I have, and I pulled out some really neat looking guppies that I like, and I'm gonna see if I'm just kind of playing around with this. I'm experimenting in my fish room to see maybe I can get some results from these. I know this is a work in progress, and if I know anything, is that this type of projects can take years before you start yielding any consistent results. So all these next three are pretty much the same thing. This one I was a little worried about, because unlike all my other tanks, this one's not heavily planted. But the one thing that I didn't worry about it is because this used to be also my scud grow out tank. I don't see a whole lot of scuds in here, if any at all. So they kind of did their purpose. I'm sure if I shake that guppy grass on the top, some of these guys will probably swim out of there. But yeah, I don't know if there's a guy swimming back in there, a scud. So I think they were able to survive on some of that. And the infusoria for the smaller fry, because there is some fry in there. You can see them swimming around in there, not a whole lot. And that's the other thing, if they drop fry, I was conscious that they might be able to predate on them, which in a source was going to create a food source for the parrots. This is the other one. Same situation with this tank. I wasn't too concerned about these guys. I knew I've left these tanks on previous trips where I was gone for 4 days, and I knew I could come back and as if nothing was going on. One of the things I do want you to notice is the bellies don't look sunken on any of these fish. They don't look as chubby as I had them before, but they don't look sick, and that's important. Because you need to understand that we don't need to be feeding these guys on the daily. They're on the lighter side that we usually like to see these guys, but that's understandable. They've been without getting any additional food from me for the last 7 days. And here's my my killifish tank. These guys are all hanging out back there. I don't know if you can make them up. See, these guys blend in real good. They're there. In here again, as you can see, some of the empty shells. These guys, I am almost 100% sure that they predate on the snails that are in here. And again, I purposely added some hornwort on the top, and I've had that guppy grass there for a while, so I think there's a good balance in here of infusoria and some live food that they had access to, and were able to be fine all those days that I was in here. Moving over here, I have the platy tank. Here, again, it's heavily planted. As you can see, There's some hair algae down there that I know these guys were grazing on because I see them doing it also up here on the hornwort. These guys I never worried a minute about. If you look at their bodies, they all look good. They're not skinny. They don't have any sunken bodies. They actually look like they're, you know, they're not lethargic. I mean, they look healthy. They're doing fine. So again, these were never really a concern. Also, being that they're live bears, if they drop fry, maybe some of those fry got picked off, because I don't see any really small fry like I was seeing before. So, but that's okay. These guys every 30 days are dropping down babies. So, but you know, they all survive. I don't see anything laying in the bottom of this tank or floating on top, which is good. On the floor, I've got a couple of 10 gallons also, and in here, this is the one line of fancy guppies that I did purchase. It is already breeding stage. They're the red lace guppies and the blue lace guppies that I have in here, and they're doing fine. They didn't have anything. This is probably my newest tank. That one was set up a few days before taking off. One of the things that I did do off of that aquarium right there, I pulled a bunch of that jungle valve that I had in the front that didn't allow me to look into that tank, and I just floated it in here. And I did that intentionally because, again, I wanted to bring plants from a season tank that I knew were going to have Infusoria in it, and put it in here to try to provide food for these guys. As you can see, I did have quite a bit of evaporation. I am running a sponge filter in the back of this, but there's not much to it. And as you guys can see them, they're swimming perfectly fine. Now, the other tank that I wanted to show you guys is these two tanks. This is my 150 where I have my angelfish, and that is the 65 where I do have my goldfish. I'm not going to lie to you, these two were a little bit of my concern. Although with the goldfish I wasn't as concerned as I was with the angelfish, because I really haven't had angelfish, especially the size of these guys that they're getting to, which are some really big bodies here, and I didn't know what to expect out of this tank, to be honest. And the reason I say I didn't know is because even though I do have some plants in there, I haven't had a whole much success with this tank because it's too tall, and I think the light that I'm using in there is not sufficient to be able to get the success. Again, if you look at the stem plants in the back, they tend to get real leggy, and the leaves are real separated from it, and that's just because I don't think that light is reaching all the way down there. But that's something else. Just a real, I guess, comment on the lighting. I know, like, I think it was either last night or the night before, I was watching a live stream where somebody was asking what's a good beginner light for a planet aquarium, and obviously the responses were the typical ones to get a fluval and all that stuff. Well, I think I'm proof that you don't need to spend a whole lot of money on lighting if you have the right plants you want to keep with. And I keep nothing but mostly beginner plants, and as you guys can see, I have quite a bit of success growing out plants, with the exception of that tank. And but all of this stuff, because I do like having green plants, and I mean not green water tanks, which I don't mind, but just being able to look in there and see plants. And all I'm running are these inexpensive shop lights that I was able to pick up under 20 bucks right in here. And for a 55 gallon, 150 gallon, I guess these are, the height of these is all relatively similar to the 75, which I think it's about 18 inches tall or 21 inches tall. There's plenty of light to be able to grow some of these, you know, beginner plants that you're going to start off with anyways. But anyways, getting back to this tank, as far as these fish, these were the only ones that I'm going to say I was concerned about was this tank. Just because I didn't think there was enough natural food source for them to survive. But as you can see, they all look fine. I don't see anything wrong with these guys. And so I'll go ahead and drop some food in there for them. But again, they were without food for 7 days. 7 days without food. That's how long they were without food. And they're doing fine. Down in here, I have my goldfish. I am going to tell you that this tank had a lot of floating hardwood. I had a bunch of it floating in the top before leaving, and it's all gone. So to me, I know that they did feed on that hornwork. Last night, I did scoop out a bunch of this duckweed, and I put it in here because this tank over here was so overwhelmed that you couldn't see any light. It's still kind of dim, but I couldn't see in the tank, so I scooped up a bunch of this duckweed in here, this is normally what I do, and one of the reasons why I like having my goldfish around, and just put it in there, and they'll slowly graze on that. As you can see them right there, they love it. That's predominantly what I feed these guys. I hardly ever give them any processed food, and as you can see, these guys are doing real good. I do have to do some maintenance on the tank because I haven't been here for 7 days. They have a little bit looks like diatom algae, and I don't have any algae cleaners in here. So I'm gonna have to do that. This one's just running off a cheap little spotlight that I picked up on Amazon a few years back, and it's doing fine. For this one, there's at least 3 tanks that I need to do an update for. Well, actually, that's 3, 4. Is it 4? Well, 3 tanks that I've got already set up with plenums. This is one of them. This is another one, and this is another one. And I need to do a review update on those tanks to show how well they're doing or not. But anyways, that's a video for a different day. This is my other rack where I have, this is a combination of different tanks in here, different sizes. This is I guess this is where I have mostly 55s or near that range. In here I have my target bars, and I am really pleasantly surprised on this tank because it looks real good. I mean, the water is crystal clear. I did have some evaporation. I did put some water in here. The water level did drop down to this level here, and if you look over, it dropped below the level of the water to go back into the internal sump that it has in there. I don't know what day that it did that, but it did get to that point. So it ran filterless, at least until when I showed up. I didn't have a filter running in there, and I didn't have a problem at all. I didn't have any losses. The water looks, crystal clear, and these guys all look like they're doing fine. So again, this was another one that had quite a bit of success. Like I was telling you, this is the tank. All this part up here in the front had a bunch of new growth of this jungle veil. That's what I ended up pulling out of there and putting it in that blue lace guppy tank. And that's so that I could view the inside of this. I kind of like this because it's just wild, and I love seeing the tiger barb swim in and out of the plants. This is one of my tanks that I really do enjoy quite a bit. Right below that is my one of my original tanks. This is a little community tank that I've set up, and mostly this is where I have all my mud guppies. Again, heavily planted tank. This tank I never had any worries or concerns about. To be honest, just because it's a mud tank, and if they have fry in here, that's what I was banking on being the food source for the rest of those fish that are in there. So this tank it started out as being a cold tank for fish that either had bent backs or just were not or just the color morphs that I really didn't care about. It was kind of like letting them, like a retirement tank for them. But I've been able to pull some color morphs from here that I want to be able to see if I can experiment with. I just need to be careful because, like I said, I also have some guppies that have some bed backs that just kind of living out the rest of their time in here. So, but we'll see what happens. Again, that's one of my favorite tanks. To be honest, I think they're all my favorite tanks. That's why I have them. But anyways, you can see that they're all doing fine in here. This is my molly tank, and the only difference that I see in here is I don't see as many of the baby fry, but you can see that there's fries in all the different weeks. This one was never a concern of mine because I knew that if push come to shove, the parents were gonna have a food source. And as you can see, even with 7 days without God in here and not heavily having a lot of cover for those fry, there's still a lot of them, and they're thriving and they're doing fine. So again, it was 7 days that I was gone and I haven't fed these guys. I'm about to do it as soon as I get off this video. This is the other tank that I was concerned about, because these guys are a lot more active. And I'm going to show you something pretty interesting here. If you look at this, these are the roots that are floating up the top. They're down there. I have one over here. And I kind of knew that this might happen. I'm just really interested to see how I did. What this is, if you pull out any of the jungle val, let me show you right here. That's what you're looking at. Those roots are from jungle val that was in that tank. So I know who ate all that stuff. It's all those Buenos Aires. They were chewing on that stuff and eating it all the way down. All that jungle val used to be planted back in here in this area, and now all you see is that really new growth, kind of scraggly looking stuff. Well, they ate all of that jungle val while I was gone, which is okay. There's still some floating up at top, because as you guys can see, jungle val is the one thing that I have a lot of, so that's real easy. Next time I do some trimmings or have to pull some, I'll just replant it back there. These guys I wasn't so concerned about so much. It was more my electric blue acara, again, because it's one of the bigger fish that I have. But sometimes you really need to trust the people with more experience and listen to what they're saying, because they're saying that bigger mass fish usually don't need to eat as often. And if I'm quite honest, I used to feed these guys once a day, so they were getting more than enough food. And 7 days without eating, this guy is looking beautiful still. His mate, I don't know, it's probably hiding out in the back like normal, but they're doing fine. My Corys are doing fine. My Pandagara was loving it because, as you guys can see, there's a lot of bit of algae still growing out in here, and they're doing fine. I do have to do a water change on this one. This is probably one of the ones that's got the most turbulence in the water, so I'm going to do that now because it has been a week without doing a change, and I don't have as many plants. You can kind of see the difference between not having a heavily planted tank versus one that is real heavily planted. The quality in the water is night and day. So I'm going to start doing some water changes. This is my last tank. This is another 55 that I have in here. And as you guys can see, this one is super heavily planted. As a matter of fact, I think I know where I'm going to get some more jungle valve for that top tank, because I need to pull all this stuff in the front because it's starting to grow. But here again, this is a tank that I had absolutely no worries about. And the reason I say that is because every time I pull some of this stuff out, I've found out that I have worms, red worms, that are attached to the roots of these. So I knew there was going to be a food source for the fish that were in here. Just a natural food source. I also have shrimp in here that are living in here, cohabitating with these guys. So if they really needed to eat something, they could predate on some of those shrimplets. So it's basically a little ecosystem that I have in here, and I'm not really worried about. I've got my food up there that I'll probably start feeding these guys after I do the water change. But I just kind of wanted to share that with you guys. My experience, what happened in my fish room. Well, I was gone for 7 days, and I didn't have anybody to feed them, and I could have looked for somebody, but that meant having somebody that I don't know coming into my property, and always running the risk that they're not going to follow the instructions that you ask them to do. So I rather wanted to I was willing to take a chance and deal with the consequences myself, even though down deep inside I knew they were going to be fine, but I hadn't done it. I had heard it preached. You know, different experienced fish keepers and hobbyists that, you know, they can go on that long without being fed. And it makes sense, because if you're getting imported fish from overseas, they're probably doing about 7 days in those bags, and they have a lot less water volume, no filtration in those bags, and yet they're able to survive. You do get some casualties, and a lot of it is just from transitioning from that water to our waters. But nonetheless, just kind of wanted to share that with you guys. Don't be afraid, and don't turn your world upside down if you have to be away for a few days and worry that your fish are not going to make it. That's all I got for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a good one. Thank you.